Alright, so welcome back guys. Once your first time here, I'm Vision here, Bonnie Tampa in our video. Today we're giving you guys my thoughts and opinions regarding if the future Power Rangers can survive without Super Sentai. Now, Power Rangers Center instant over there. Hit subscribe button down below, hit that bell icon, there's more Power Rangers content from me. Moving forward. Now let's begin. Now, there's been a lot of talk lately among the fan base whether or not the future of Power Rangers can survive or should be even continued by adapting Sentai footage. Now, this is a very interesting topic to me because I think personally, I think it depends. There's a lot of things that go into PR that they do, but I do think if done right, they can pull it off. You saw with Cosmic Fury, they did do pretty well with that. They did take certain elements from, was it, I forget the Sentai it was. You can let me know in the comment section. But they did take certain elements from Sentai and then adapted it there. And then they also did original story as well. I think if you had good story writers and good people behind the scenes, you could do it. I know, like, we could also get original suits. I know people might be wary after what happened with Cosmic Fury and how bad those suits were. I personally somewhat give them a pass on the Cosmic Fury suits for the plain and simple reason is when moving forward, one, I don't know if they fully had plans on what they were going to do, but and given that they also didn't have enough time to kind of put together an original suits, so I somewhat give them a pass. I still say they did a terrible job, but I still somewhat give them a pass, especially if you go back and look in their past when they made original suits with the Spirit Rangers from Jungle Fury and the Titanium Ranger from Lightspeed Rescue. They have shown in the past that they can make original suits and original costumes that look good. So in that aspect, you know, people might say, oh, I want Sentai, I like these suits, I like this. Sure, but I think, you know, making original content also is good. It takes it, especially when you adapt Sentai's content. Moving into my next point, sometimes you have to move and adapt and change different things. We know that certain monsters and certain generals throughout the years weren't able to be adapted because one, they didn't fit into the story, they didn't fit, like, you know, what was allowed in the US compared to Japan has different regulations and laws in regards to what is allowed to be shown on TV. So that definitely hindered it. So that also, again, hinders the storytelling. Now, I know with certain seasons like RPM and, what was it, Lost Galaxy, they changed a lot of the Sentai and did a lot of things to, you know, that work around different Sentai footage. And those ones, at least for me, are some of the best ones or best seasons. But I think making original stories, you don't have to worry about, you know, trying to get around what they did in the Sentai. I think it makes things a little bit easier for the writers because they don't have to worry about, one, where the Sentai went with their story, because that's another thing I'll touch on here, is with the Sentai, you do have to have certain stuff there. You do have to use suits at one point. That's kind of why we got the Void King. I think they actually did adapted that pretty well in Dino Fury, how they made Void King and used that kind of Sentai. I do think, for the most part, when it came to the main villains of Dino Fury, they did do a good job in incorporating and translating, you know, how they fit into the story. However, making original suits, even monster suits, it allows you to have more of, you know, liberties into storytelling because you don't have to rely on what they did with the Sentai footage to have it line up with the US footage. It also helps with budget because then, you know, they have to kind of pay to rent out these suits and whatnot. So you save money there. You can make your own stuff here, in whether it be in the US or wherever they're filming or wherever they decide to make it. You know, it can be cheaper in that aspect. I don't know how much they pay to rent out the suits from Japan, but it allows for new storytelling. You don't have to, again, worry about, you know, how the story played out in Sentai. You can just use the suits and tell your own story. I know fans have been very big on the popularity of adapting Sentai. And I would admit, I've been one of those people who love the live action PR. I've kind of been pushing against them doing animated because I've just become so used to them using live action and adapting Sentai. But I think with how everything goes, no matter what product it is, no matter what franchise it is, eventually they have to evolve and do something different. Power Rangers has been doing the same thing for 30 years now, and I think, if they want to move forward and do something different, they need to change. They need to morph into something different. They can't rely on the same thing. And I think that's one thing that has hindered them. 30 years of relying on Sentai. And I'm not going to say Sentai hasn't done good stories and we haven't gotten good stories, but I think that being able to tell your own stories without having to worry about what Sentai did, is helpful. I know, certain seasons didn't look where Sentai ended, but, you know, relying on Sentai can also, while you do have good seasons where you can adapt, but you also have problems, say, with the Megaforce seasons or Overdrive, where, adapting those Sentai seasons was just a complete and utter mess. Even though they tried to do things, and like I said, with RPM and Lost Galaxy, they did like a complete 180 with their storytelling. But you can't always rely on that and hope for that. You gotta, do something different. We will always love what they did with, MMPR and everything for the past 30 years. Even if you don't like the Neo Saban era, certain people do like that. And I think one of the things people don't like about certain things is that we grew up, some of us, you grew up with the Saban era, the Disney era, the Neo Saban era, the Hasbro era. Whatever era you grew up with, that's your peak. No matter what it is, I don't think anything will, beat that Sentai or beat that season of Power Rangers, because that is where you grew up with the franchise. You always have strong nostalgia for what you grew up with, and nothing is ever gonna top that. So no matter what era you grew up with PR on, I don't think anything's gonna top the era that you grew up with. I personally do think was it the Hasbro era was a big improvement from the Neo Saban era. Again, it was a shorter era, but I still think they did do a solid job with Beast Morphers and Dino/Cosmic Fury. I do think that, again, I think, I don't know where I'd rank Saban, the original Saban's era, and Disney, because both had pretty solid runs. Saban only, in my opinion, had one real bad season with Turbo. Same thing with the Disney era. I know some people say Mystic Force was a poor season. I think it was, in comparison with what we got in the Neo Saban era, I think it is more of a solid, just okay season. A lot of people will say Overdrive's a bad season. I'll agree on that. But, both seasons were good. Both eras were good. We know how the Neo Saban era was. There are people who love the era. And I think one of the things that people love about the Neo Saban era is it comes from those kids that grew up on it. Again, we all grew up on different eras, so, we always have that nostalgia for that certain era of PR that we grew up with. So, we always have that. But when we move forward with PR, it's time to change. I think going original footage and doing original stuff is where the franchise needs to go. During the original reports of this new reboot series, there have been reports that they are going with original content, which personally, like I said, I think that's fine. I'm good. Again, the one thing that is interesting with doing original content is doing, Megazord battles, because I don't know how the US would do that here. I do worry about that, with how they adapt that and do that kind of content in original, footage or CGI or whatever they would decide to do. I do worry about that. But also, I don't know how much they really rely on Megazord content, because if you saw my video regarding how they're adapting the comics, I think, they're going to be focusing more on the Rangers' everyday lives, so maybe we don't get as much Zord content. I know a lot of people do like the Megazord fights and the Zord content. Personally, for me, I'm okay. We don't need the Megazord content for me. I think seeing the Rangers in everyday civilian form, fighting, it just gives us more character moments, more character development, which a lot of people complain about not getting enough of. So personally, I'm fine without getting, any Megazord content, even if it's some Megazord content. I think we would at least need some Megazord content, just because it's part of the DNA of PR, similar to the comedy, whether you like it or not. The comedy is part of the DNA of PR. They just haven't really modernized it in a good way of comedy. But, this is where I think PR needs to go. No Sentai adaptations, no, relying on what they've done in Sentai. Because then you also run into the issues where you have seasons like Samurai, where they kind of copy the entire, season beat for beat, similar with Time Force. You don't want to do that. You want to make your own original stories, but I don't think you should also rely heavily on Sentai. But those are just my thoughts, pins regarding if they should move forward with Sentai content using Super Sentai content within PR. Let me know all your thoughts, opinions in the comment section down below. Do you agree with me that we need to move on and change from Super Sentai? Do you want to stay with only adapting Super Sentai, or would you want to maybe see a happy medium like what they did with Cosmic Fairy, where they adapt certain content here from Sentai and then do original content in other places? All that good stuff in the comment section down below. So yeah, guys, those are my thoughts, opinions on whether or not I believe the Power Rangers franchise should move forward and continue to use Super Sentai content when making Power Rangers. As always, if you like this video, don't forget a big thumbs up and share. Don't forget to hit subscribe button down below. Hit that bell icon to see more Power Rangers content from me moving forward. And go for me on Instagram, Twitter, Retro Winged, if that's section on my YouTube channel. As always, I'm Vision here, Boy Entertainment, and I'll see you next time.